Hello. Can everyone hear me? It's okay. All right, thank you. Um, so we've been having a lot of classes about death and grief and dying and stuff like that. So I thought it might be nice to have a class about things that are a little bit friendlier. So this class is going to be about um, how to a lot of seniors are lonely. A lot of older people are lonely, or they're living by themselves, or sometimes they have problems with being not being able to hear or see so well, and so they get cut off. And so I thought maybe it would be nice to make a class about how to relate with older people and ways to connect with them and help them to reconnect with the outside world. So that's what this class is about. So let me share my screen. So the title of this class is Friendship Opportunities in Later Life: How to Reach Out to Elder Neighbors and Relatives. And so let me get this thing. Okay. So in the past, it was more common for families to stay together for many generations. And even now, in a lot of different cultures, you see that extended families are living together. But it's becoming a little bit rare, especially in countries that are more modernized. Definitely in the United States, there are a lot of people who aren't living near their parents at all. And so what happens is these elderly people are left by themselves. And their children, they don't see their children or their children's children very often. So there here I just thought I would come up with some ideas of ways to relate with older people. And it's beneficial on both sides. It's you can learn a lot from older people, and their friendship can be really valuable for younger people and also for them. So the first thing that I was thinking about is that most people don't really suffer from aging or from illness. It seems to be as people get older that the main problem is that they're isolated, and this affects, of course, it affects their feelings, but it also affects their health, and it's a big factor on health. So it's important to understand that you may have friends, and I see this in myself a lot, actually. I haven't seen someone for a long time, and I know they're getting older. Maybe they're in their 90s already. And then I think, well, if I reach out to them, maybe they've died. And or maybe they've moved, or maybe they're just not available anymore. And so I put off contacting them because I think it might become complicated. And this isn't really, in researching for this class, I realized that this is something that really that isn't, it's not an appropriate response. So as we get older, actually, it seems that friendship becomes more essential, not less essential. And especially for people who are living alone. So this class is for everyone. This is for older adults and family members and caregivers and friends and potential friends, in just ways that we can create connection with each other and create friendship. So before we start, maybe just think to yourself, think of who do you feel close to right now? And then think who might be feeling lonely today among your friends. And just keep that in mind. So there's this idea that as there's transitions that happen as you grow older. Retirement is a big one, or the children can leave home, or perhaps a loss of a partner, or loss of income, or loss of neighbors, or even a pet dying. All of these things can be they're painful transitions. So this is one of the things that happens with aging. It involves loss. But one thing to remember, your schedule now, your schedule as an older person, or the your friend's schedule as an older person, it it becomes a lot more open than it was before. They have a lot more time than they had before. And so because of that, things become more possible. There are more potentials for things for them to do. Although they might not have the ability, they might need help with those things. But generally speaking, an older person has more time, fewer obligations. They have more time to, well, to meditate, to also to maybe start new hobbies, like if they're interested in writing or reflecting on their life and maybe starting to put together the meaning of the things that happened in their life. But also, this is a time when you could reconnect with old friends or start different kinds of new friends. So it's not really the end of a social life, but it's a change. It's a kind of like regrouping and stopping to think, okay, what is my world like now? And just embracing that and exploring it and seeing all the potential that exists now in your world as changes happen. Um, so one thing that happens as we age, and I'm sure everyone has seen this, everyone who's graduated from high school, even that's really one of the first big changes in your life is you graduate from school and you move on. You either go to college or you get a job. And all the people who have been your friends for all these years are going in different directions. And you think you're going to stay friends, but it's there's a big change. And so that's the first big change that we have in our life. And following that, there are a number of changes that happen. But then as we get older, especially around maybe retirement age, then there's a lot of changes, big changes, and it might be difficult to cope with them. So one of the things, there's been research that's shown that isolation can be as harmful to our health as smoking or as inactivity, not getting exercise, that just by being isolated, we have the same amount of potential for illness. So it's not really, though, about being busy all the time, but it's more about connecting, being seen by others, and seeing others. So one of the things that we have to understand that as we get older, friendship doesn't change, it doesn't end, but it changes shape. There are different friendship looks different as you get older. So there are losses, but as we have losses, there are also new openings. What for one thing, your time becomes more flexible. You have more, generally speaking, often I don't, but but a lot of people as they get older, they have more time, and so they're more available for new things, new activities, new friendships. Um, so one of the things to remember is that friendship supports emotional health as well as physical health. So even just the fact of having regular communication with somebody, knowing that somebody cares about you, these things are essential for your physical health as well as your emotional health. Loneliness is generally a health risk. When I know now, I'm going to be 75 in a couple months, and I know when I go to the doctor, especially if it's a new doctor, they almost always ask me if I'm lonely. And for me, that's not an issue because I have my life is different from normal. I have friends and but actually I do live alone, and I suppose I could be lonely, but I think I'm more of a hermit. So maybe for me that's not such a health risk. But I think with very many people, especially if they're used to being around other people, if they had a big family, or if maybe they had neighbors living nearby, that if all of a sudden they find themselves alone, they don't really know what to do with themselves. And so that becomes a health risk. And that's something the doctor even asks you. If you go, they'll say, "Oh, are you lonely?" And it seems to be a big deal with doctors, I've noticed. But to counteract that, even having a few friends, even a small connection, like once a week somebody calls you up and just checks in, even something like that makes a difference. Um, One of the some of the changes that happen as you get older in friendships, that friendships become slower, they become deeper, they become more meaningful, and maybe the connection is deeper. I think just looking at my own condition, that as I get older, I start thinking more about my life and the meanings of things that have happened in my life and how things connect. Like something connects from something that happened when I was young might connect later with something else. And all these things start to kind of come up in your mind because especially if you're not busy all the time, then it's possible to start just making connections in your life. And it's interesting, and it's also something that it can give you a sense of, first of all, of accomplishment, but also perhaps more about what I need to do to tie things up, to make connections, and how to, like, it's almost like writing the last chapters of a book. How does the ending go? And it's not a sad thing. It's actually very interesting. Um, a friendship in later life, it's not about going and doing fun things together, although it can be, but it's usually not so much about that, but just more about having physical presence with somebody. So if you have a family member or a friend or a neighbor who is older and who is perhaps living alone, just by visiting them, it doesn't matter what the context is. It doesn't matter if you do something or not, but just by being there, it helps to reinforce your friendship and to make on both sides. It makes things, it's it's fulfilling. If you can be constantly kind to somebody, then that becomes a strong friendship. So it's something to consider. Another thing that people who are getting older could do is reviving old friendships. So, what happens very often is that at a certain age, perhaps after we, maybe in our 20s or something, we have friends and we hang out with our friends, but then there's a tendency for most people to get married, have children, and then their life changes completely. And you find that you don't see your old friends as much, or maybe not at all. So these people that you're very familiar with, very people and family members as well, that you find that you've lost touch with them. So maybe 50 years later, when your family has moved out and you're by yourself, you might not think about reaching out to your old friends from high school, but it's actually very beneficial to do that. It's, for one thing, you have a shared history. So you don't have to create a friendship, you have a friendship. And your old friends already know you, they know what you're like. And so it builds trust. You can connect with an old friend, and even if you haven't seen them in many years, you you they it's comfortable, it's easy. I actually a while back I went to my 50th high school graduate the 50th year anniversary of graduating from high school, and I hadn't seen any of those people in 50 years. And it just so happened I was in town, but it was interesting because there was this connection was already there, and I already knew these people, and it was actually fascinating to see. It was like time travel. You see somebody, and then you don't see them for 50 years, and so you see them as a young person, then you see them as an older person at the end of their career, and it's very interesting. So I would actually recommend that if you ever have a chance to do something like that. But and it's also it's at that point it's helpful to reconnect. You might not really think about it. Might seem awkward somehow, but there's ways to do it. With social media now, sometimes it makes it a little easier. But you could just send them a message to say, I was thinking of you and I was wondering how you're doing. Or if you have a transition in your life, you can reach out to some old friends, like if you move, or if you retire, or if you have a birthday milestone, like a big one, like 75. Maybe it's a time to reach out to old friends and just say, hey, I'm 75 now. And then maybe they'll send you a present. Maybe they'll call you up. Maybe you can reconnect. So there's different ways to do this. Email. If you have their phone number, you can call them. Or even it's been suggested that you could write them a letter by hand. People still do that. Or connect on social media. For example, here's something that might be done. Maybe after 30 years, you can reconnect with a friend from your childhood, and after reconnecting, now call each other up and talk maybe once or twice a month, or get together once a year or so, and those are just ways to reconnect with this friendship. And it can be very grounding. It can be very meaningful. I've got a couple friends from when I was very young that I still connect with, and it's very sweet. They know you so well. And generally speaking, even if somebody hasn't seen you for a long time, they're pleased that you remember them, and they'll be happy to hear from you. So let's see. Um, oh, so one thing you could do perhaps when you're thinking about it is just write a letter to an old friend, connect with an old friend, and just see what happens. See what you can make of it. Maybe it'll be something really precious to you. So this is a picture of. It's supposed to be a picture of two brothers calling each other. So this is ideas about how to maintain friendship when there's a distance. So it's more important to be consistent, like keep it up as a habit, don't just do it once. It's having a habit of connecting maybe once a month or something is better than having a connection, maybe having a big party and then not seeing them again for another 5 years. Better to maintain a friendship on a monthly basis or something like that. Just sharing ordinary things. What are you doing in your life? And lots of times it's talking about what your children are doing, or what you're teaching, or where you've traveled to, or things like that. Now there's the technology now is much more supportive of connecting with people. So maybe we're not in the habit, but we can use it. It's helpful. It's not the distance that ends the friendship. It's the fact that you're not connecting. You're not talking to each other. You're not in touch with each other. So the idea here is it's in order to connect with an old friend or an old family member, you can just schedule every week or every month to talk, or just share ordinary life things, not big stuff, but just what movies you've seen, what books you've read. And also now it's very easy to send photos of everything you do. So your family might be interested, and your old friends might. Just send them a picture of something beautiful that you've seen recently. It doesn't take a lot of effort, even just to send a voice message or an article that you see online or something like that. Also, it's possible on both sides to have a friendship, be intergenerational friendships between younger and older people, and you can have very good friendships. Some of the benefits are that it's beneficial to both people. You can see in the picture that it's enjoyable to have a friendship, and the fact that they have different ages means they have different skills and interests, and so it can be even more interesting than having or more beneficial than having a friendship with someone your own age, because there's not a whole lot of difference when you're the same age. But if it's like, for example, here, the older woman is teaching the younger woman how to cook, and the younger woman is presumably teaching the older woman how to use her internet or something like that. So it can go both ways. It can be shared benefit here. In a case like this, the older adult offers experience, patience, life wisdom. Lots of times, older people have had or understand things that you might not even you might not even know. It might surprise you. Whereas younger people bring this kind of energy and youthful curiosity to a friendship, and so both sides benefit. So the idea is that if you have a friendship between an older and a younger person, it works best if there's some kind of an exchange, not 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 like a one-sided instruction, but for example, here in this picture, the older woman is teaching how to make some wonderful thing that she knows how to cook, and the younger one is helping with well, who knows what it is, but she could be helping like with maybe doing something that's a little more difficult for the older woman, like climbing up on a chair and changing the light bulb. Even things like that are helpful. So where does a friendship like this start? Often there's it's possible to do volunteer work, or a lot of times you can meet people in a spiritual community or some kind of a club that different people will join, or even just somebody in the neighborhood, or having the same hobbies, or also from mentorship programs like that, where sometimes, like here where I live in the public library, there's a lot of programs where older people can teach younger people accounting or things like that. And there's also classes for learning English. And so that's another way to meet people. There are also locally with me and maybe other places where younger people can drive older people or people who are sick. They can drive them to the doctor or take them to the grocery store and things like that. And so this is a way to meet people and to create these really beneficial connections. Yeah. So then also, one of the things that people here where I live in the Sedona area often do, they'll get a group of them will go visit people in a rest home, and this could also be very beneficial. I think people in rest homes, they don't see younger people very often, and they're all there by themselves, and nobody has much energy, and the food isn't very good, and I think it's probably pretty boring. And so for somebody to show up and just even just being there, just you don't even have to do anything in particular, just physically being there, talking, listening to them, things like that. It's not about entertaining particularly, it's more about just being there. The picture here is I I had the idea, I've heard that in Holland, in the Netherlands where I was born, there are programs where they connect a preschool with a rest home, and so they're actually the buildings are connected, and that way the older people can go and visit the little kids, and the kids also get the benefit of having all these grandparents, and so for everybody it's really beneficial and healthy. And so that's something that you can do something like that. Maybe even if you have a lot of little children, maybe just take them to the rest home. And I think if you're not used to seeing children, I know for me, I don't have children, I don't see them so often, but I when I see a little kid in the neighborhood or something, it just makes me happy to see them, you know. And I'm sure it's the same with other people who are, especially in a rest home. So when you visit people in a rest home, there are some suggestions. One of them is that you sit at eye level with them. So you're not looking down and you're not looking up, but you're just looking directly toward them. And 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 then allow silence. Don't be worried that if you don't have something to say, that's a problem. If you want to initiate a conversation, which of course you probably do, then you start with what they call open-ended questions. Like instead of saying something like, how many children did you have, but more like, what was your favorite job, or what music do you like, something like that. Because then that can trigger a lot of memories and a lot of things that are interesting to talk about. So the point is not to cheer them up, but it's more just to acknowledge their humanity. So if you're visiting a rest home, then try to give them time. Don't don't rush it. And don't talk about them, but talk with them. And don't talk to them as if they're children. I know sometimes after your hair gets gray, at least in this country, people start calling you honey or dearie. And I always think that's kind of an insult to think that I'm a sweetie, you know? I'm not. Um, and sometimes I feel like saying something, but I never do. But this kind of thing, to talk as if they're children, or as if it's not recognizing the huge amount of experience that this person has had in their life. Another thing to do is to bring something to do, like photos or music. Bringing children is good. Bringing animals is also very popular, I think, with visiting rest homes, because an animal can really relate to just about anybody, and nobody expects an intelligent conversation from a dog. It's just nice to see them, and something like that is very helpful, I think. Um, yeah. So another consideration is older older adults often feel excluded. I know sometimes, especially with young families, that they just want to have holidays by themselves with the family, and then the grandparents sometimes get left out. And so that's something to consider. Like when you're having a Christmas, it might be a little bit more problematic to have extra people there, but it means so much to them. And it means a lot to the children to have their grandparents there. And it's just for the whole family. It makes everybody feel a lot more comfortable, happy. So don't think that the older relatives won't enjoy family events. Like if the kids are having a birthday or something, then think about bringing your inviting your parents. They you might need to do if they're older or if they're not so healthy, then you might want to adjust the length of the time of the gathering, make the visits a little shorter so that they don't get tired. Or if they're coming to visit, give them a quiet space so they can go and rest. Because when you get older, some things that just seem normal for a younger person are tiring, and they might want to just go lie down for a while. Or if it's a family gathering, then give them a role, like they can tell stories about their past, or they can help with tasks, or they can help with rituals if it's a religious occasion. But then also to protect them from having too much interaction. Like it can be really tiring to be playing with little children for a long time, although it's wonderful to play with them for a short time. So keep that in mind. With the children, encourage them to listen to the stories that their grandparents tell, and let the grandparents teach them traditions, family traditions, old songs, things like that. Try to give it your full attention, and don't be just looking at your phone the whole time, but connect, let them connect. Let the relationships develop naturally between the children and the grandparents. Don't try to force anything, but at the same time, allow it to happen. Um, um, so then the idea comes up of spending time with somebody who is sick in bed. And this isn't necessarily an older person, but it can happen anytime with any family member or any friend. And sometimes it's kind of awkward to visit someone who's sick in bed. I I often feel uncomfortable because you don't really quite know how to relate to them, and especially if they're in pain or if they're unconscious, then how do you relate to them? So some suggestions. First of all, just your presence is more important than what you have to say or any busy activity you might have in mind. But just showing up it makes a big difference to the person who's sick. So when you visit somebody, you don't feel you have to bring them flowers or balloons or whatever, cards. It's not really so important to them as just the fact that you're there. I was one time I was in the hospital for a month, and there was one of one of the women I had been working with. I didn't really even know her that well, but she came once a week and just sat with me. And I almost don't remember it because I was in and out of consciousness at the time. But even now, it's 30 years later, and I remember the fact that she was there and she showed up. And so that kind of thing means a lot to people. Even just the fact that you're there, you don't have to really do anything. You don't have to entertain them or anything, but just be there with them. Um, so certain things you can do with somebody who's in sick, really sick in bed. If they're in and out of consciousness, then just sit quietly and hold their hand. You can read to them. They may or may not be able to follow what you're saying, but even the fact that you're reading something, the tone of your voice is comforting. You can play music that they enjoy, or if they're a little bit more conscious, you can tell them what's going on in your world, what's going on outside, and just connect them back with the family and with the friends. Um, Things you can talk about with them, memories of the past, things that you're grateful for, or updates. But just the fact that you're there often communicates more than what you're trying to say. Um, it's best to avoid when you're visiting somebody who's sick, really sick, or dying. It's best to avoid conversation that is overstimulating. Like, don't tell them about what somebody told you at work that made you upset, or if somebody is getting a divorce. These things you don't need to talk about those things. Just try to talk about simple things, like maybe one of the children was in a play at school or something like that. Just things that make them feel connected and things that are not too exciting. Don't try to cheer them up. That really doesn't help a lot. It's they know the situation, and actually, There's a tendency to lie to people. Sometimes it's a cultural thing, and sometimes in a certain culture, they won't tell somebody when they're really sick, and they think that's better. But my experience is that personally, I would rather know if I'm sick. I would rather be able to prepare, especially if I'm going to die, just to know what's going on. And I think many people are like that. Probably most people would rather know. But you gauge it for yourself. Is this person someone who would prefer to know about everything that's going on, or don't talk about the illness at all? Just gauge it and understand people differ in these things. So one suggestion is, for example, if you have somebody who's sick in bed, then you might just, if it's a long-term illness, you might just say, okay, read something to them for 10 minutes every evening. Just make it as kind of a ritual, just poetry or maybe a novel or something, just so that there's something that connects you that you can both look forward to. Okay, so now this is different. This is a whole different topic. This is about uh, gifts for people who are older. And a lot of times there are holidays when you're expected to give a gift, birthdays, or maybe Christmas or New Year's, or just various holidays like that. And I know it's very, you think, oh, this person has everything. I don't know what to give them. Well, they also might not want anything because they might have a lot of stuff already. And to get more things, it's a burden. So just understand that it's if you want to give people a present, an elderly person, make sure it's something that really matters. Something simple. It could be, I mean, something like a book that they haven't read might be really welcome. But lots of things like another bar of soap or more lotion or something like that. They might rather not have something, more things, because they might have a lot of things already. Usually when somebody gets to be older, they've pretty much got everything they need to to live. They've got furniture and dishes and all the things that you need to live. So so best to think about when you if you're going to give a gift. The best kind of thing is an experience, like take them to a movie or something like that. Take them out for dinner. Bring them some nice food, a nice cake or something like that. That kind of thing, something simple. Some other suggestions for things that an older person might enjoy: photos, photos of old friends or of the grandchildren, things like that, or recorded messages from family members, or music from when they were young, or times that music that they especially enjoy, or visits or calls. Sometimes something like a nice blanket is welcome. One time I was in Mongolia and they had cashmere blankets that were remarkably inexpensive, and I brought one back for one of my old teachers, and he kept that. He really, really enjoyed it, and it kept him warm, and that kind of thing is a nice present. But generally, it's hard to find things. A subscription to a magazine or a subscription to a website or something like that, that could be a nice gift. Or just things like visits, phone calls, just being reliable, being available. things like that. These are good gifts for older people. The main thing is not to clutter up the house even more than it is already. So if you're going to bring something, then maybe ask if that's something they'd like. Okay, so this one is about family history. And this is something that I think people don't think about it often until it's too late. But the idea is interviewing the older people in the family and just getting the history of the family. Because if you don't, lots of times they don't want to talk about things. I know my father was, he had some really bad experiences in the war, and he never spoke about it. And I didn't know about it until I heard from his sister. And otherwise, he never talked about it. But things like that are really, they're life changing. And the experiences that your parents went through and your grandparents went through are reflected in the way they act now. And stories like this affect the family, and it's valuable to know why are they acting the way they do. What is the history of my family? It's very interesting. And so you can ask, and elders often really appreciate being asked. Lots of times they don't think anybody cares, but once you ask them, then the floodgates can open and you learn a lot about your family or about the history of where you live or just in general history. It can be very interesting. Understanding that the stories that they have are a legacy of your family and that it's meaningful for them to be asked, and that just to record it it's meaningful for them and for you. So now it's so easy to record something. You can do it on the phone, either audio, video. And one of the things you can do is like ask your grandparents or ask older people, older teachers, things about like what was your childhood like, or what were the milestones, or what advice would you give to yourself as a younger person, and things like that. So questions that can evoke a long description. Then asking about everyday things, not just major events, but things that happened normally in their life. Just how did people live in those days? What did you do before we had electric cars? Or did you ever have a horse? Or there's a lot of things you can ask, and you can get all kinds of interesting stories. And then share the recordings with the rest of the family, and they'll appreciate it. You could also make a book. One of my, I think a great aunt, she wrote a history of our family and published it. And it's fascinating, to know how they came to where they live now. And it was very interesting. You could do that. You could do that for your children and your children's children, and that would give them something to know about the family. And it's nice also for the grandparents because they know they won't be forgotten, and that's important. Okay, so winding up. So just to remember that friendship is an ethical act. That friendship in your later life it's not just about changing your loneliness, but it's about honoring the connection of humans. Friendship is important no matter how old you are. And even small efforts at creating connection are worthwhile. just showing up, just being there is important than more important than how you show up. Just the fact that you're there is the most important thing. Connections between generations are beneficial to everyone. So those are some of the takeaways from this class. Some things to think about. Think maybe who could you reach out to this month that would make a difference in their life and in your life? Maybe an old friend, maybe someone you haven't heard from a long time. Maybe someone you've admired from a distance, but you never had the nerve to talk to them. Who could you reach out to? Or who might be lonely right now? If you think about who could be in your circle of acquaintances and friends, who might be lonely? I'm sure you have people that you don't feel tremendously close to. But if you reach out to them, maybe it's the start of a close friendship or a meaningful connection. Who would benefit from a call, a phone call, or an email, or a tweet, or anything like that? Who could you reach out to? Who would benefit from this? And what? How can I help someone with my presence? Even a small thing, even a something like the person that checks you out at the grocery store. How could you change your attitude toward them just by being there and letting them know you see them? That might be very meaningful to them. So keep that as a consideration. So old age, just remember, old age doesn't have to be the end of meaningful relationships. And that if you are consistently kind to people, then your community will increase and it'll be a happy community. Okay, so that is my presentation. I wonder if anyone has any comments or questions. I can't. Oh, hi, Shanti.
Hi, thank you so much for the beautiful presentation. I'm going to share the video with friends.
Oh, good.
Um, when I looked at the photo of the family, um, all together, the different generations, I felt sad. So I wonder what advice you have for people who have family that is divided, that can't get together because of resentment and problems in the family.
Well, let's see. I can think of two things. One of the first is there something you can do to change that? Reach out to somebody. I have a family member who's very difficult and has always been complaining and making trouble. And every now and then I try and just reach out. And about half the time she's very nice. Half the time she isn't, but sometimes sometimes it can help. The other thing is that you have your family of friends as well. And I
Mhm.
know you have a lot of friends. And so there's always a kind of a guilt with me anyway, that I feel like I should be there closer with my family, but just be realistic, just do the best you can.
Mhm.
And then have you can feel closer maybe with people who aren't related, but you have a heart connection maybe. That's kind of what I'm thinking.
Thank you.
Yeah. Anyone else? Anybody have anything to discuss? Maybe not. Okay. Well, thank you all for coming. I'm sorry it was such short notice. To this time, I was thinking it was next week, and so I didn't realize until a couple of days ago that I was going to have this class. So I wasn't able to advertise properly. But I'm glad you all came, and I guess we'll see you next week. Bye bye.